Welcome back to the Lost Ledgers, a podcast here in the Dead Bar Society Twitch, where we bring homebrew that each of us makes and talk about it. I am
to the
joined,
next level.
to the next level. I am joined here below me by Justin
Water is life.
and Zach.
If you want to get in on that water action, check out our last
I
podcast.
was going to say that, yeah. Where we did water-themed subclasses.
I might have
Justin
forgotten
repping
about
right
that.
now.
I
He
might have
forgot about it.
I'm
He
focused
known
on
he
what
wouldn't have
I'm
said
focused
that.
on
It's
today.
one of these episodes, and then it's gone. I don't remember anything we did. I just black out.
But yeah, welcome back. We are here this week to talk about spooky spells. It's basically Halloween in August now, which is fine by me because my birthday's in August. So if we can have a spooky month around that time, that's pretty cool. Would also mean that it's colder out, and August is hot enough. So if we can get it nice and cool outside, it'd be nice.
Yo, it's been too hot.
We should have done Shawn spells. Just
Shawn spells?
spells catered for Shawn for his birthday week. Just
What
Oh, we
would that-
should have.
what would that
anything related to you as a spell.
curious.
Second-
I wish we
level
had done
goblin.
this.
Second level, goblin polymorph. You just can polymorph into a goblinoid.
Just turn into a goblin. I'm curious. I wish we had done that because now I'm curious what that would mean.
Well, add that to the list.
It's a little late now. My birthday week's gonna be over by the next podcast.
No, but we can do
We're
like
doing next year.
like birthday themed like podcasts. Add it to the idea.
Well, I think it's unfair that if I don't get one just because we were late for mine, that
You'll
other
get
people should
one.
get one. Seems a
Just
little
keep it going
unfair.
for a year.
Adam's birthday is next month, so anyway, yeah, we're doing spooky spells. Every spell that we're going to discuss today has some sort of spooky theme to it. Doesn't necessarily have to be overtly spooky. And as we discussed last week, breaking things down into mechanical bits can make things seem less spooky. So it's all about the theme. And if you want to know if a spell is spooky, this is kind of my barometer. If you want to know if a spell is spooky, think about how you, as a DM, can use it to freak out your players. That's the best way to think about whether or not you're making a spooky spell. Because as a player, getting a spooky spell feels less spooky because you're usually the heroes of the story, right? So when you use a spooky spell, say like blindness is deafness, which I think is a spooky spell in some regard, it's not as spooky for you because you're the hero doing it to a villain. But if you're a DM and you're running the villains, you want to spook at your players, spells like fear can be very spooky, or darkness can be very spooky. So that's kind of what my jump into this was. And the first spell on the list we have here is mine. So before we get into it, was there anything else you guys wanted to say before we started discussing our spells?
I was just gonna say Zach and I were actually talking about this on how, for the most part, you won't really take. Like, these aren't spells kind of made for players. They are more for DMs. Players can still take these spells and can still use them, but
Why?
weird flex, but okay, Zach. But
Zach put a clip in the chat for anybody who doesn't know of me saying yes sir, which is
Great.
I don't know why he did that.
I agree with the sentiment that for the most part, these spells should lean more towards DMs, but players can still take them and still you could still kind of really fuck with your DM in this sort of way.
I took that as a personal challenge and tried to make spells specifically for players.
Yeah, I made spells that I thought would be useful for players. I just think that like doing it from the perspective of a DM is a better gauge of whether or not it's spooky. Because as a DM, if your players use a spooky spell, you're not going to get spooked. But as a DM, if you use a spooky spell against your players, they might get spooked. So I just thought, as the person who controls the theme and the tone of the game in a lot of ways, the DM has better control of getting the most worth out of a spooky spell. But with that being said, let's go jump into my first one, knowing that I came in with that mindset of both. I gauged how spooky it is from the perspective of a DM, and I also thought about how useful it would be to a player. So, my first spell here is Creeping Darkness. It's a 6th level necromancy spell for bards, clerics, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. Casting times 1 action. It's a range of 30 feet. Its components are VSM, but the material component is a black ribbon lined with lead. And the duration is instantaneous. So once you've cast this, it's out in the world, and it's up to the saving throws for it to persist. You choose a creature within range, cursing them with progressive affliction to their senses. The creature must make a wisdom saving throw or be afflicted by or with phase 1 of this effect on a failure. The creature is unaffected by this spell on a success. The target must make a wisdom saving throw at the start of each of its turns. Each time the target fails, the creature is afflicted by the effect of the next phase of this spell. Phase 1. The target cannot benefit from any special senses such as dark vision, blind sight, and that will also include things like true sight, tremor sense, anything that's special on top of their senses. Phase 2. The target has disadvantage of wisdom perception checks. And ranged attacks made against the creature at a range greater than 60 feet have advantage, and ranged attacks that they make out to a range greater than 60 feet are made with disadvantage. And if the creature is within reach of 3 or more of its enemies, melee attack rolls against the creatures have advantage. So essentially, it's been tunnel visioned. It can't react better or well to attacks that come from too far away. And if there's too much creatures around it, it can't focus well enough on all of them to defend itself properly. Phase 3. The target is blinded and deafened. So straight up, they just lose their senses. At the end of every week, the target can make an additional wisdom saving throw against this spell. If it succeeds on the saving throw, the spell ends. So similar to Feeble Mind, it persists for a period of time, and then once they make the save, it ends the effect. And at higher levels, 7th and higher, for each level slot, you can target 1 additional creature. And that's it.
So it fails its first saving throw, and then it is stuck every turn trying to succeed. Yep. And otherwise it's on phase 1.
Yes. If it makes it first saving throw, there's no effect whatsoever. Nothing happens to it.
Right.
If it fails it, then yes, it gets afflicted by phase 1, and then it must make a wisdom saving throw at the start of each of its turns, or be afflicted by the rest of the phases. And that just happens in perpetuity, which is eventually they're probably going to be affected by all these by the end of the week.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up next, was just how once you get outside of combat, I was assuming this spell was cast in combat, that there are going to be people that are just going to say, well, I want to keep rolling, because let's say they're like a druid or something, and they have an insanely high wisdom saving throw, or a paladin, for example, and they're just like, I don't think.
Why would they want to keep rolling?
No. What I meant by that is, when you get outside of combat, you're going to have to, make this roll every 6. You're probably.
Yeah, every 6 seconds you would generally have to make this roll, yes.
And so I think for that, there is kind of the issue for there might be kind of a bit of friction for it. It's like, well, you're going to fail it eventually, but the player's going to keep, or the target's going to keep wanting to roll and make sure that they succeed. I think to kind of circumvent that, this is going to be more of just kind of the DM or whoever is making this, or whoever I guess in control of it, just sort of saying, well, what if they just rolled every an hour and see if they moved on to the next phase? That's just kind of the way that I would condense it, or make 3 or 4 rolls, just because I think that's a lot. That's a lot of rolls to have to make.
It is a lot of rolls to have to make, and it is every turn for the situation where you do use it in combat, because this is a useful combat spell.
Absolutely.
The first effect would be very useful for a lot of creatures. A lot of creatures have blind sight or true sight or dark vision even. And then the second effect definitely helps in combat, and obviously the third effect. They all help in combat in some way. There was a tug of war in my mind between how quickly I wanted this spell to affect people, because I did keep in mind that if it is every turn, that they make a save every turn in it, and they are eventually going to fail the save. Unless you have an extremely low DC and they have an extremely high bonus, where their minimum is beyond what your DC is, in which case they wouldn't be affected by the spell at all, which means there's no reason to even have to worry about this effect. So there's always some chance, however small it might be, that they make every single saving throw for the entire week until they save at the very end. It'd be very, very tiny of a chance, and that does lead to the problem, like you're saying, is that like would the DMs and players maybe negotiate at that point, like should I just make it every minute then or every hour so I don't have to keep on making rolls, or should we just concede that I'm going to fail? And I didn't have I mean, there are elegant solutions to that, and I think it might be worth changing the spell for that. The balance that I had a problem with was figuring out how to best balance this for battle and also it's out of combat effect. Because Feeble Mind doesn't have that problem. Because Feeble Mind is just one immediate effect and it's done and over with. Whereas this is a progressive thing.
Yeah, I like the idea of phases. I don't know if this is a thing at all in regular
phases. No.
So I've seen you do this before in past stuff for us in general, like stuff that we've played. I love the idea of phases. I have the concern about the at the end of every week thing, only because what if you just made it at phase 3? I know this would be a really quick ramp up for this, but at phase 3 you are that, and then at the end of every week you get a save, and that's it. Instead of continuing to save at that point.
That is how it is.
Well, no. Well, I think what he means is you fail the first time, right? And then 3 rounds go by, and then like you've gone like you don't make any more saves. Just the phases will go by, and then you make the save like every week. So no additional saves to try to like fight it off and fight it back.
Here, I have a question that at phase 3, what happens right now with the spell? You hit phase 3.
If you are afflicted by phase 3, there's no reason for you to make saves at that point, because the saves that you're making during the spell are just to prevent it from progressing. Once it gets to phase 3, your saving throws have no effect anymore. Because the saving throws you make after the first one are simply to abate the progress of the effect, not to get rid of the effect. And the saving throw you make every week is the saving throw you make to get rid of the effect. It's not explicitly spelled out in the spell that once you get to phase 3 you stop making those saving throws. But if you conceptualize how the spell works, there's no reason to make those saving throws anymore because they don't do anything at that point. So I could add verbiage that just says, you keep making these saving throws until you are afflicted by phase 3 or something like that, to make it more obvious that there's no more saving throws to be made once you've failed all 3 phases.
Yeah, I think I would add that, but also I think I'm on the same page with Justin. If you get stuck at like phase 1 or 2 with a person with high wisdom and the spell was used on them, they're gonna want to roll to not be, and that's a lot of rolls.
I also think maybe a way to kind of go like circumvent that, and also this would just kind of be cool, is they're making saving throws at the start of their turn for a minute, and then
that's actually a really great idea, because reason they've mentioned that I've done this before. The spell called Blood Rot that I did, that spell is different from this one in that it lasts for concentration up to a minute. And because that lasts for concentration up to a minute, there is a limit to how many saving throws somebody can make. That's a good idea. It's just making it last for a minute.
If you hit phase 3 in that minute, then you have that effect. I would say.
Well, after the minute passes, you just have whatever phases you ended it with.
Yes.
So like if you never got to phase 3, then you're only affected by phase 1 and 2 until the week is over. That's a good way of doing it. I don't know why I didn't think of that. It's such an obvious solution. But yeah, it's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah, and then maybe trying to figure out, what kind of a spell would negate this effect. Because
I mean, Dispel Magic would, or remove curse.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I think this spell would benefit from not being able to be affected by Dispel Magic or remove curse.
And just remove curse? Oh, I would say definitely allow remove curse.
Well, I guess
it's supposed to be a curse. That's the whole point.
Okay, then remove curse, or
but not
or
to
like
spell magic. I'm down with that. I did a
or
similar thing
like
for the next spell on the list. So
yeah, or like greater restoration per se.
yeah, maybe Greater Restoration I would allow. It's a 5th level spell with a costly mechanic. Sid to say in the chat, so it keeps going until they get to phase 3. That's correct. Yeah, it just keeps on going. So it's creeping on them. They're the only thing they can do is try and stop it from progressing. But as they point out, that would be a lot of rolls if it doesn't have like a limit. So I think the minute limit works. And I like the at the end of every week they can make the save to try and get rid of it. But yeah, I think adding a clause to allow remove curse to get rid of it explicitly might be helpful.
Now, you landed on 6th level for this. I'm curious why. This seems like it might be stronger than that to me, even.
Well, because blindness, deafness, which is only one of the 2 effects, is 3rd level, and that's concentration for an hour, I think. And there's also what was the other spell that I was looking at?
Bestow curse at 5th level.
Yeah, bestow curse is 5th level, and this only seems like a level greater than bestow curse because bestow curse, as you may have seen this past Sunday when Penance used it, is pretty fucking strong. Bestow curse allows you to just give someone disadvantage on saves. It allows you to make them just do nothing every turn if they don't make their saves. This seemed kind of comparable, but a little bit stronger because the big thing that you get from this effect is the getting rid of special senses.
Yes, that's what I was looking at for it.
Which getting rid of special senses to me is effectively equivalent to blindness. The difference between this and remove our blindness deafness though is that this isn't concentration; it's permanent for a week. And I was looking at Feeble Mind, and Feeble Mind seems like a much stronger effect than this is. So I was somewhere between 6th and 7th for me because I think it's stronger than Bestow Curse, weaker than Feeble Mind, and I settled on 6th between the two.
Gotcha. I think I would still almost go up to 7th just because losing that special sense, if you're thinking of like creating a boss fight and stuff like that, and if you get rid of a boss's special sense and they have like dark vision and they lose that in the middle of a dark room while fighting them, is almost a death sentence immediately to a boss like that.
Yeah, but also at that kind of higher level, like obviously it would kind of suck to have to blow legendary resistance against the spell, but I mean it's worth it to do that. And honestly, like getting rid of a special sight is impactful, yes, but even still, adventurers go into dark dungeons all the times. They come with lights. They come with torches and a ton of other spells. Other ways to be able to illuminate it. So most monsters probably also have some type of way to illuminate things, whether by magic innately with fire or lightning. So I don't necessarily think that that's as big of a death sentence as you'd want, or as you're thinking it is.
The other spell I was thinking of, the big comparison for me on this one is Eye Bite. Eye Bite is 1 save, 6th level, and it knocks the creature unconscious just straight up, which allows you and your allies to get an entire turn of prepared attacks on it, and any of their attacks within 5 feet would be critical hits, which I thought was comparable to this, right? So like both effects to me are kind of a death sentence. Though, Eye Bite, at the very least, they will become unafflicted once they take damage. But I didn't think that the amount of advantage you get from 1 turn of unconsciousness is so huge that it seemed comparable to me for 1 week of losing your special senses. Especially, I don't know, I just think there's so many spells at 6th or 7th level that do just break encounters if you don't have explicit immunities to certain conditions. And Eye Bite was the big one I was comparing it to.
That's fair. I don't know high level ones. That was just kind of an alert to me on that one.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't make it any lower. I would not make this any lower.
Yeah. I would for the special senses, probably just list all the ones you're getting rid of.
The special senses are an explicit like thing in the game. But I could
Okay.
probably. I think there's only 4 of them anyway, so I could probably just list them all. Dark Vision, Blind Sight, Tremor Sense, and True Sight. I think they're the only 4 that I can think
Yeah.
of.
If there's only 4, if there's
Technically
more than
Devil
that, then I
Sense?
think it might be okay. But
Devil's
Yes.
Sight is not a special sense. Devil's Sight is an augmentation to existing Dark Vision for devils.
Gotcha.
Oh, looks like we
But-
got a follow from Fragilities or Fragilitas.
Thank you.
I'm not sure which one of those is the correct pronunciation. I also don't know if you're somebody that we know, because there is somebody that I know who uses the username Fragility, but it's not Fragilities. So I don't know if it's just a coincidence or what. But yeah.
But either way, we will use our spells and we will find you.
Speaking of which, I have a great spell for doing that.
Oh boy, that's pretty spooky.
It's pretty spooky. Well, you have to see not finding someone, but like tracking someone. But yeah, was there any other thoughts on this one?
I don't think I have anything else. I like this. I like the idea of phases, although I think that that's definitely something that would have to be watched. But I think we kind of figured that out with the last phase spell that you made.
Yeah.
Just because too many definitely gets pretty mucked up in action.
Too many is too bad. I think 3 is the perfect number. And I think that because the way the phases work, you can space them out however you want. So like if you want like a super bad effect, you can make them make the save every day, for instance, and make it worse over the days or something like that. There are some effects in the game that kind of work like that, just not explicitly in like a phase system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is like a
the Medusa's Sight does that. The Medusa's Sight's like first restrained, then you're petrified, but it doesn't explicitly call it a phase.
Yeah. No, I like seeing you bring it back though. I like the idea of this spell. For sure.
Yeah.
I would be frightened as a DM having that used on a boss.
The first fatal lows is already pretty scary for a boss creature. That's why that's probably going to be a lesser resistance for you, which is fair for I think a 6th level spell. I think at that point, pretty much if the players haven't broken down your boss enough, they really should be using like these stronger effects to bring that down. Or if they've already brought them down at that point, it's like that's when the fight should really start be going down. That's when the boss should be losing or going on to the next phase at least.
And I think that other 6th level spells are comparable enough to like you have to really choose to want to use this spell.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's so many good 6th level spells that you're like, oh man, do I even like this is strong, but if niche still.
Yeah, I like this spell in a scenario because once again, creatures don't know if you cast spells on them unless they have a reason to. So if you have a way to stealthily cast a spell on somebody and like say you are not strong enough to fight the dragon yet, but you know it has blind sight, so you want to use this spell and you know that you have, if they fail to save, they have a week where you can get to them without having to worry about their blind sight or true sight, for instance. Like if you get this off, you have a week from that point forward to use the invisibility or illusions to your advantage. I think it's a cool preparatory thing that you can do as a player.
Oh, for sure.
And I think it'd be pretty badass to pull it off. Oh, hey, Adam, what's up? Thank you. We just kind of covered this one. I think we're about to move on. I want to say Zax is next.
Yep.
Yeah, Zax is next. So we're moving on. We're gonna go ahead and move on to Zax here. Because I think we said pretty much everything we wanted to say there. All right, Zach, how would you walk us through your spell here?
All right, I'm still new to making spells, so be nice to me.
No.
Laughing Skull is the name of this spell. 4th level Necromancer for Bard, Cleric, Eldritch Knight Fighter, and Wizard. Casting time 1 action. Range Self. Components VSM. It takes a humanoid skull. Duration instantaneous. You create a spectral skull that is 15 feet wide and 20 feet tall, centered on you. As the skull cackles, you send it 30 feet in a straight line in any direction. Any creature of your choosing that it passes through must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, they take 3d6 psychic damage and is incapacitated for 1 minute. On a successful save, a target takes half as much and isn't incapacitated. A creature affected by the spell can make a wisdom saving throw at the end of each of its turns to not be incapacitated.
That's pretty cool. I like that. Okay, so I'm gonna just say this because I think Justin's also thinking it. This is completely irrelevant to the spell's balance or effects. You're gonna hate me for pointing it out, but I have to because it's part of the podcast. Giving the spell explicitly to Eldritch Knights. Eldritch Knights don't have a spell list, so they don't get to they just choose from the wizard spell list. So giving it to wizards is giving Eldritch fighters the opportunity to get the spell. All right, that's the only thing I wanted to say about that. But as far as the effects, I think this is cool as fuck.
Yeah,
I like the visual of it a lot.
I love it. And the psychic damage admittedly might be a little weak, but you're not really using it for the damage. Maybe bumping it up to like 4d6 just because it's, what most you do is 26. It's not terribly high amount.
Well, I think a big part of this that's important is to note is that it's not concentration for an incapacitation effect. So I think that's a pretty big.
Very good point. 24, Adam. I'm sorry. Not all of us are math majors like you.
Only half of us are.
Oh yeah, only half of us are here actually. My other critique would just be, I guess, how it would scale. Maybe, you increase the d6, maybe you increase the wit per spell level cast above 4th.
Okay, so your critique is that maybe you could allow it to scale because he didn't put a scale in this.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is just seeing the potential way that we could allow this spell to scale. But even if it is just a 4th level spell and it doesn't have any scaling features, I still think this is a really good spell. The incapacitation is nice. The damage, like I said, a little low, but again, the AOE incapacitation, as Adam has pointed out, that's what's the real thing is.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Now I would almost.
So what I was gonna say is that the obvious relation that I'm going to use is hold person. This actually doesn't affect only humanoids; this affects all creatures, so that's a buff. Hold person's concentration. This isn't, so that's a buff. Though hold person is paralyzed and not incapacitated, which is far better. So that's a nerf. But this is also 4th level, and when it comes to AoE spells, characters are going to be looking for an opportunity to hit probably at least 2 creatures, probably 3. I think most people are going to be most satisfied to hit at least 3 creatures, which is comparable to hold person, because hold person at 4th level can hit 3 creatures. So I think overall the nerfs between and the buffs between hold person and this kind of balance out, because paralysis is a much stronger condition. This spell would be really good to use against the back line of spellcasters who are concentrating on spells, because once you're incapacitated, you just lose concentration. But they're also going to have proficiency in wisdom saving throws as well. So I think the biggest buff on this is the fact that it affects all creatures, not just humanoids, because hold monster is 5th level, and that's for 1 monster of any kind. But again, that is paralysis and it is concentrate, but it is also concentration. So there's a back and forth between those two effects. Actually, hold person might be 4th level. Actually,
hold person is 2nd level.
I'm sorry, hold monster. My apologies.
I believe hold monster is
5th level.
It's 5th level. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
that and dominate person are both 5th level. So yeah, it's a tough one. I think I personally think it might be a 5th level worthy spell, because I think, like I said, I think all those effects kind of balance each other out. But because it affects all creatures and not just humanoids, it puts it a little bump above a 4th level hold person. From my perspective. So I think one more level might be enough. I think 4th, I think this would be on the stronger side of 4th level. I think this might be like polymorph level strength. In my opinion.
I think
like the strong and the 4th level spells.
I think another thing too with when it comes to the range, hold person is a 60-foot range if I am not mistaken.
It is. That's true. That is a big one. But it does specify that the creatures must be within 30 feet of each other as well.
That is true.
And we all know how much Zach hates polymorph. That is absolutely
I
true.
do.
That is true. But I think I think that was just another kind of like thing to call it, like the different, like the buff / nerf difference.
My solution to that is, what if I made it creatures with an intelligence score too low aren't affected?
That doesn't really
Hmm.
solve the issue.
Yeah, because at a certain point, all the big bats you're gonna be fighting, at this point, are gonna be kind of smart. Like usually, well, that's a good
Like,
question. But what is like the intelligence spread of creatures above like CR9? They're
I
probably more intelligent than not, because all the beasts are
Yeah,
CR8 or lower. So it wouldn't affect them as much.
yeah, I think
But then again, when you're facing a group of creatures with a spell like with an AO, like because you're using an AOE spell, you're most likely going to use this against a group of creatures. So they're going to be lower CR for them to be like a reasonable fight for a party.
I don't know. I think it's difficult. I think it's still kind of hard to balance it like with an intelligence level.
What if you give undead and fiends advantage on the save or something? Yeah, I mean that kind of fits in with the theme of like a lot of spells that are necrotic don't affect undeads and constructs, for instance.
Yeah.
Another thing that you could possibly do, though this would probably, I don't, could nerf it too much, is make it a frightened thing. So like creatures that fail to save are frightened, and while they're fighting, they're incapacitated, and that would limit the creatures that it could affect. But then again, it also gets rid of its use against stronger creatures because a lot of stronger creatures are immune to frighten. So it's a rough balance.
So I do have one question, Zach.
Yeah.
Because you put this in here for the Eldritch Knight Fighter. Are you still trying to make this spell 4th level so that way an Eldritch Knight Fighter can get the spell?
That's
No,
fair.
that wasn't the idea. I don't know how the fuck to do the what classes get it.
Okay.
So just ignore that. We can change that
Okay.
to anything.
Okay. Okay.
That was
Then
just an educated guess that I failed on.
okay. Then bump this up to 5th level, and I think we can call it a solid.
I think buffing at the 5th level would do it, but I think if we want to keep it 4th level, there could be some avenues. One of which, like I said, could be the frightened thing. That might nerf it too much, to be honest.
Yeah.
But then again, that in the same vein that I said that you're gonna be using this on a group of creatures that be lower CR, you're gonna be using this on a group of creatures that are probably be less likely to be immune to frighten. So it depends on what. So when you were imagining this spell, were you expecting creatures to be using this against like groups of like creature? Obviously, some amount of groups of creatures, but you think about like boss creatures. Like, are you trying to make this as useful in all scenarios as possible?
I was just thinking of a dope ass giant skull flying at you.
Well, I think that was definitely accomplished. Yeah, I think the frightened condition does it. Could make it a little.
I do imagine, like you using this on anybody really that's close up to you, like even if it's melee people, because it takes away your attack and reaction.
Yeah, it's a good escape option.
It's scaring people, but I didn't want to use frightened
Right.
for not like great reasons. I just didn't want to.
Yeah, I actually want to look up what fear does.
Frightened, I have it here, is a frightened creature has different.
Spell,
Oh, gotcha.
which I was looking at earlier.
Okay, so here's the thing. Fear can affect any creature that isn't immune to frightened. But what fear does is it forces the creature to use its action every turn to dash to run away.
Yeah.
The creature in its location, sight of you, the creature makes a wisdom saving throw. So this wouldn't allow a creature anything beyond making a save at the end of its turn, but fear only allows it when you're out of range. So this is kind of capital fear in that same way, but because it's 4th level, and it kind of accomplishes the same thing where they can't use their action to hurt you. And fear can affect all creatures in a 30-foot cone, which is a very comparable area. I think this might be fine as it is. The only difference between that and fear would be the concentration. Fear is concentration. But this does allow for more saves, which is pretty big. And when you're incapacitated, you can still move. You can still move on capacity. You just can't take actions or reactions.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that because
Do you think if I made it frightened and lowered its level and made it scale, that would be too weak?
No, I don't think so. If you made this 3rd level and made it
Frightened instead of incapacitated, just got rid of incapacitated.
got rid of incapacitated? If you got rid of incapacitated and replaced it with frightened, I think this would be worth a 3rd level slot.
And then I could make it scale damage-wise, although this wasn't supposed
Yeah.
to be much of a damaging.
Yeah, but it's always nice to have a scale in there anyway. Like, fear doesn't scale, but
And I was a little bit worried about making the damage on this AoE of an attack scale.
yeah, Adam agrees. By the way, Adam's not here this week, but he is in the chat. So you probably noticed that he's not here, but we've been saying his name, so that's probably confusing. I could be here. I'm home now. Oh, really? Well,
oh really?
I mean, if you just join the Discord, I can change the overlay to 4 people.
Come in here, you coward, or are you too frightened of us?
Yeah, I'm set for my computer. Sick. All right, yeah, come on in, Adam. All right, let me go to the 4-person.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Oh my god, it looks so scary.
Until you put on your webcam, you'll be in the wrong box. Nice, perfect. All right, well, welcome, Adam. Looks like you just mourned somebody.
Yeah, sorry, I had a job interview, so I was wearing like.
Hey, it's appropriate for the
Yes,
it's appropriate for the
totally.
cast, yeah. Yeah. So so Adam agreed with Zach. I don't know if Zach got the idea from Adam or if Adam was just agreeing in the chat, but yeah, putting the 3rd level, make it frightened instead of incapacitated, and increasing the damage per level, I think would be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and honestly, even if it's a pretty weak scale, I think I agree with
Yeah.
Zach. You don't want the damage to be the main point of this, but just adding like an extra D6 per spell level just makes it
Yeah.
feel like, well, it's worth my time sometimes to upcast this.
Or if you're forced to use a higher level spell slot, you're not hating the fact that you have to.
Right. Yeah, you aren't getting punished for like, oh, I've got to burn a 5th level slot on this 3rd level spell. I'm getting nothing out of it. Like, well, you're at least getting an extra 2d6 per creature.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot like a warlock complaining to me.
Yeah, my one issue with frightened.
Wait, do you even have this
because
spell available to warlocks?
No, but it can be. Like I
Yeah,
said, I didn't know what the
hey,
fuck. I thought it was too high of a level for. I don't know.
Spooky spells should be available to warlocks. Just as a rule, spooky stuff should be available to warlocks.
Not
I
always.
figured
Though.
you guys would tell
According to
me
War
what
with
to put
Wizards.
to that.
Yeah.
My issue with frightened was, well, originally I thought frightened was the fear effect where you have to run away.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
But also looking at it now is that they can't move closer to the source of the fear, which wasn't quite the intention, but I guess still makes sense with if you're putting this on squishy mage characters and such.
Yeah, I think it could potentially fit more thematically because the way this at least for the flavor of the way I've read it is like that skull coming at you and like you are dazzled or not dazzled but like dazed by the effect and can't make your actions. But with the incapacitated condition, you can still follow the creature.
Yeah.
You just can't do anything.
Yeah. I'm coming around to it. I think I like frightened better. Lower it and then just some sort of scaling.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind the frightened condition, we can go back to the original idea of making this a frightened condition that incapacitates and keeping its level where it's at because that limits the amount of creatures it can affect.
If you make it frightened and incapacitated?
Right, because frightened, and while they are frightened, they are incapacitated. Because that way, if a creature is immune to the frightened condition, they're unaffected by the incapacitated clause.
My only issue with that is that it overlaps a little bit. In incapacitated makes you not be able to attack, and frightened makes your attack rolls have disadvantage. while in
Right,
those-
but the way that the charms and frightening conditions kind of work in 5e is that they are a superset of other conditions. Like it's used as a way to specify what an effect is, and not most of the time not just used in of itself. Usually, like with the fear spell, for instance, they are frightened. Oh, and also while they are frightened, they do this other thing. That's usually how those two effects are used by 5e spells and monster effects.
Yeah, that's it. In this case, what you're doing is you're just using Frighten as a way to give immunity to the right creatures for your
Gotcha.
incapacitated effect, which is what you really want.
Okay, I'm cool with that. If we can keep it at 4th level and incapacitated, that seems a little strong to me, but I'm cool with that.
Well, I was definitely strong without the frighten, but when you add the frighten, it actually nerfs the spell because it can affect like the stronger monsters. And
Right,
if what you're doing is
Cool with
say you're the squishy mage and you're being overrun by mooks, using this as an escape option is perfect in that scenario.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially if you can like get them in a choke point where you can hit all of them with the skull.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that quite a bit because I don't see a big bad being afraid of this, honestly, especially
Yeah.
when you get to later levels. So I'm cool with that. I like that option.
It also, this would be a great spell for the DM to use against the party as an escape option for their bad guys, and it gives an opportunity for like paladins to help their party overcome, like barbarians to overcome that fear, and like it's just a cool effect to have as a bad guy.
I like that. So then, if we do that, then keep it level that it is. Don't add the scaling, but keep the
Yeah.
rolling each turn.
Yeah.
I like that.
All
I
right.
still advocate for the scaling, but that's just me. I like it when spells scale.
I mean, the scaling's not that big of a deal with that. I mean, any level the spell is, we can add the scaling. The scaling is not like
Right.
end all be. It's not going to destroy this spell. It's not going to make it too strong.
Yeah,
1d6 per level is not anything to like be too worried about.
Yeah, like I said when I was in the chat, the damage here is basically a ribbon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just supposed to be a visualization of what the effect is happening. It's psychic because
Yeah.
the skull is passing through you, the cackling and everything is just getting
and
in your
also
head.
that way you at least get something out of the spell, even if
Yeah.
everybody makes the
Yeah.
save. It's like, well,
Yep.
at least I did a little bit of psychic damage.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, also the other way that I did mention about scaling it was making it either maybe go a little bit further or widening the skull, but that's just
Scaling distances on spell levels, I think, is kind of clunky, personally.
I think it could be done right on certain things. I don't think it fits this for my own.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
fair. That-
I think long arm is the perfect spell, yes. But I think that most of the time, if you use your spell scaling to scale a distance or a range, it feels
It's not
a
gonna
bit
feel
clunky.
good. Yeah, I don't think
That's
it would
fair.
feel very good either.
That's very
It's
fair.
it's also hard to do to like make it like, because the source for meta magic that increases range just doubles a dimension, and doing that to a spell, like every time you do this a spell level, it doubles. It's like, okay, but can I double this and that, and then double this on top of itself?
That's
and
fair. That's
just a bit
fair.
much.
It was just-
I
it
think
was just
there
another
are ways that it could work, but it's rare that you need bigger areas for your spells to be more effective,
Yeah.
which makes the scaling
think-
niche. And you don't want the scaling to be niche. You want the scaling to have like to be
Yeah.
the most overall, which is why it works a long arm, because the whole point of that spell is to make your arms longer.
You're right.
So like
One of these days we're
scaling
gonna
it, yeah.
One of these days we're gonna reveal long arms to the world.
Long arms. We don't have. This is a homebrew review show. We don't have to review long arm. It's already perfect.
Well, and also,
I said
like,
reveal, not review. Reveal, Shawn.
Well,
There's
and
a
also,
difference.
to anyone watching this spell, long arm does what it says on the tin. It makes
Yeah.
your arms long.
Pretty self-explanatory.
I think anybody who watches this can make exactly that spell. Like it's not some sort of a. Especially just the fact, whatever.
Hush.
Well,
It's our secret.
We could probably move on from the spell, right?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Fair.
I like mass changes.
Don't want to get into a tangent about long arm. All right. Incidentally, the next spell is Adam's. So
Perfect.
Perfect.
Adam, why
right,
don't you go ahead and walk us through your spell here?
So this is Feast of Fear. It's a 4th level spell that I didn't give a school to. We'll
Yeah, I
come back
guess.
to that. It's available to sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. Casting time and action, range 30 feet, verbal and somatic components, instantaneous duration. You prey on the fears of a nearby creature, ravaging its mind as you do so. Choose a creature you can see within range. That creature must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failure, it takes 6d8 psychic damage, and you regain hit points equal to half the damage dealt. On a successful save, the creature takes only half as much damage, and you regain no hit points. If the creature is frightened, it has disadvantage on this saving throw.
Ooh.
I very much like this spell, and I don't know if you had this issue, but when I saw the last line, if creature is frightened, blank, I was like, oh, that could be so many things, it'd still be awesome. So like my mind races like, should it be disadvantage? Should it be more damage? Should it like give an additional condition? Like
I had the exact same thought. I was like, what is
Ooh.
the right buff for this for if the creature is frightened?
You could
I
make it
considered
scale with that.
I thought about doing that. I thought about my original thought was if the creature is frightened, increase the damage dice to 8d8, but I couldn't think of the right way to word that. And so I was like, well, what's something that I do know how to word? And that's giving it disadvantage on the saving throw. Well, and I also considered for a moment giving you one buff if the creature is frightened, and then a different, bigger buff if the creature is frightened of you.
Ooh,
But
interesting.
that felt a little too fiddly, and once I'd already
Yeah.
given disadvantage on the regular debuff, I was like, I can't really think of a way to make this better than that without just feeling like it's piling on. But that was my original thought: was regular effect, frightened, and frightened of you.
So where my mind went when I saw that if the creature is frightened, I went straight to blight and just
Oh,
had it max damage.
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
But
and that's the thing. Well, and actually, blight has a similar clause here. It's like if the creature is X, automatically fails the saving throw and max damage.
well, no, I believe with blight, it's if it's a plant creature, it has disadvantage and it takes max damage.
No, plant
yeah,
plant
that
creature.
is what
Plant
it is.
Oh, right, sorry. Non-magical plants automatically fail to save. Plant creatures have disadvantage.
Yeah.
Oh, no, non-magical plants just die. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no damage. It just fucking dies.
But
I like the idea of this scaling to any, if not all of those, but that would be very wordy. But that would be awesome if it scaled on the if frightened effect.
Yeah.
I think
I
that would
think
be dope.
the
I think
issue with if it's scaling like the level on the frightened effect per se is we run into the same issue that we have with the frightened effect is at higher level when you're going to be casting the spell at
Both.
higher spell levels.
both. You
Both.
scale it. The frightened effect does more damage, and as it scales, it does more damage to both the initial damage or the base damage and the frightened damage. Because the frightened condition is going to be a niche effect. You could treat it almost as half a die, as opposed to a full die. So scaling a spell by 1.5 d8s is not as strong as scaling it by 2 d8s.
So
And
here's
I
my
think-
idea
Yeah.
on the scale. This one might be ridiculous, but if you scale it every 2 levels, and at 6th it would do you gain the full heal from it, and then at 8th you just do max damage and get the full heal from
you wouldn't even need
creatures
to-
that are frightened.
Well, you wouldn't even need to put the full heal. You could or because you've already mentioned it at 6th level, but at 8th level it just does max damage.
I don't know. To be perfectly honest, it feels kind of unfun to remove the dice rolling from the spell. Like
That's fair.
as powerful as max damage is, I don't like there being a built-in way to say, "Hey, you know those dice that you bought to play this game? Don't bother with those. We don't need them anymore." Like,
That's fair.
I mean, but
I do like rolling dice.
once again too, it does kind of come into it does kind of fall into the more niche thing. I think if the creature is frightened, it has disadvantage on the saving throw. If it's frightened because of you, max damage. But also, once again, at higher levels, you won't be able to get away with it. I don't know. That's just that's just me, I guess. I guess as someone who who also likes rolling dice, I also love max damage.
fair.
I gotta say, I love this spell though.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of that is
Then
not like to change it at all, just additions. Honestly, I think this is a great wholesome awesome
A
spell.
wholesome.
Wholesome?
I
Yeah.
think it's the opposite of wholesome,
Nom
actually.
nom 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 nom
but-
nom nom.
This is
Um,
a spell that I wish Kairos had when you guys fought him.
Oh,
Ah,
that would have been
fuck!
terrifying.
I love the.
Also, I've been thinking about the school. I think this should be enchantment, since it's specifically preying on their mind.
I think it should be necromancy.
Yeah.
Similar to kind of like, well, it is preying on their
just the life
mind,
drain.
but the life drain is the big thing. But
Yeah.
I can see enchantment because it is psychic damage, just preying on their mind specifically. But because you're getting a benefit out of it, it feels less enchanty at that point and more.
That's
Well,
like-
true.
and
Yeah,
al-
that's the thing. Enchantment doesn't generally get like damage spells, so
Yeah.
Well, and also
except power
too,
word kill. But that's not really a damage spell, I guess.
enchantments are more of effect, like kind of affecting another creature. This is just
Well,
Or
right,
like
but
a-
they are
like a-
specifically affecting its mind, which is what I was drawing on here.
that's fair.
Yeah.
I would lean toward necromancy just because of the healing.
If it weren't for the
Um,
healing, I think enchantment's definitely the way to go. But yeah, I think the
Okay.
healing kind of.
I love that this is only 30 feet.
Yeah, that's the thing. You've got to be pretty close for this
Mhm.
for this to work at all.
Yo, if someone's having a nightmare, right? You're like a fucking Gengar eating the dreams.
Yeah.
Did you
Um,
get this spell inspiration from Gengar, Adam?
I didn't know.
Damn.
I was thinking of like good wordplay, and I thought of Feast of Fear because those two words are really close together, and I was like, Feast of Fear. What the fuck would that be?
It's kind of like Freddy Krueger, who like lives off the fear.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Look at this synergy we're creating between spells. I love it.
We love it. Yeah.
I think the disadvantage of the saving throw with frightened's fine. I do like the idea of like if I had made this spell, this is a parallel creation of the spell, not a superior version of the spell. But if I had created the spell, I would have made it such that if a creature's frightened, they take an additional 2d8 psychic, and then if it scales, it would be one additional d8 for both the base damage and the frightened damage.
Yeah, 2d8 extra psychic was my original plan. I just couldn't get the wording quite right, and since I know you like to pick on wording, I was like, no, I want to make sure that my wording is 100% on this one, especially since I wasn't planning on being here to defend myself.
That's fair.
I think you could almost add that to the disadvantage even. But maybe
I
instead of
don't know, I
2d8,
think
just
that giving a
1d8.
disadvantage and pumping up the damage might be a little too much.
I think
Might
if you added the 2d 2d whatevers, you could make it 5th level and then have it scaled with that.
That's true.
Possibly, yeah.
But I want to be clear, I love this spell as is.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty big fan of this one.
Thank you.
This spell would go great with the updated version of Zach's spell.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Huh,
Unfortunately, I don't.
Hex is enchantment.
What is?
What is?
Hex.
Is
Probably
enchantment?
because
It's enchantment.
it's you are affecting them negatively more with the obviously
Right, but
You're doing more
again,
damage,
enchantment is generally about affecting the mind. Like, because
That
like,
is interesting.
because like if you were to
I
make someone
think-
physically weaker, like Ray of Enfeeblement, that's not enchantment.
I think it's kind of like
That's-
a nocebo type thing where it's like you mess with their mind where it's like they kind of manifest their own misfortune.
Yeah, but
that's-
I mean that kind of tracks. It's just it's weird. I'm looking at the list of all enchantment spells right now because I was like, is there anything even remotely like this in enchantment? And the only big damage dealing spell in enchantment is Psychic Scream, which is a 9th level spell. So
Yeah. Wait, isn't weird enchantment? Oh, that's illusion. That's illusion.
I was gonna say weird is not on this list.
Weird is illusion.
So enchantment also says influencing or controlling their behavior as well.
Yeah, which
and
that
you
would
give
that
them
would fit
disadvantage on
Hex.
ability checks. So
Yeah, it's just ability
Kinda.
checks and not so yeah, it adds up. It adds up. Well, unfortunately, I don't really have much else to say about this spell.
I'm honestly very happy with that. I
Yeah.
consider it a great success when I design a spell that we're like, yeah, there's not a lot to say about this. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
know.
really prize that the simple attack of like, no, I have this idea, I want to translate it into mechanics, and there's not really that many ways to do it. Like,
Yeah. Sid says
I love it.
wholesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it is
Exactly.
wholesome.
He said
It's
wholesome.
absolutely wholesome.
All right. Well, are we ready then to move on to our next spell here?
I think so.
I
Which
should be ready.
believe
Yeah.
is Sid's spell. I'll go ahead and take the reins on this one. For
Sid, you better
reading it
be
anyway.
here.
All right,
Just on
Sid.
the name of it, I expected this to be Shawn's.
I'm scared.
So for anybody who doesn't know, Sid he kind of does all of the like graphic design work. He did the icon, he did the layout, he did the all of the little things at the bottom below the stream, all the what are they called?
Panels.
Nodes, panels. Thank you. And this is kind of his first foray into like having his homebrew like looked at. I'm sure he's done some level of homebrew, having been a DM before, but probably not a lot since he hasn't been able to DM that much. So that's where we're gonna go ahead and look at this and see what it's all about. So we have Cognizant Possession, 4th level enchantment. No classes, we can sort that out later. Casting time, 1 action, range 30 feet. Components, VSM, a small doll with likeness of the target. Ooh, some voodoo doll action going on. And a diamond worth 500 gold pieces, which the spell consumes. Interesting. Duration, 1 round. That's a rare duration. Let's see how this goes. You are able to suppress the consciousness of a creature and control them as if it were your own body. This creature must succeed on a saving throw of your spellcasting ability DC. On a fail save, you take control of their body until the start of your next turn, leaving your own consciousness. You use the target's strength, dexterity, and constitution ability modifiers for any checks made using those scores. You retain your alignment and personality. When controlling the target, you are able to see, hear, and speak with their voice as if it were your own body. The possession lasts for the duration until the target drops 0 hit points, or you can end the spell early as a bonus action. After the spell ends, the target has no memory of the possession. If the target dies before the spell ends, you return to your own body and take 2d10 psychic damage. All right. And then at higher levels, when you cast this spell using a spell slot of 4th level or higher, you increase the duration. At 5th level, you increase the duration to 1 minute. At 6th level, you increase the duration to 10 minutes. 7th, an hour. 8th, 6 hours. 9th, 12 hours. Interesting. So this is very similar in effect to Hold Monster. But it's a more of a direct possession than it is of controlling their mind. Curious.
So I want to say first, Sid, wonderful first creation.
Fucking sick, dude.
This is very evocative.
Yes, love the amount of different things you can do as a spell, both as a player and as a DM. My first critique on it would be my first critique on it is more or less just kind of the spell cost, because for a 4th level spell, it's gonna be quite costly to have a diamond worth 500 gold pieces at level 7. But even still, I don't necessarily even think that this spell should require that cost.
I like the cost. I like the cost of it. Not the how high it is, but I do think this spell needs a cost.
Yeah,
I think that's a good call.
I think a costly component is a good call on this spell, but I do think I agree with both Justin and Zach that 500 might be a little bit pricey. One thing that I'm not sure if this was your intention. I'm not sure if this was just you forgetting to set the saving throw, but the way this reads to me is that the saving throw is whatever your casting ability is. So if you're a wizard, they're making an intelligence save, and if you're a sorcerer, they're making a charisma save. That's my reading of this, and I think that's phenomenal since you are possessing them. Like, it is a matter of you overcoming their mind, so you are doing that with whatever your casting stat is, whether, like, if you are for some reason I know that Shawn is going to say that this should be a charisma saving throw no matter what, but I think it's really cool that the idea is that you are overpowering them with whatever mental stat you excel at. I understand the argument that this should probably just be a charisma saving throw, but I appreciate the idea of you are dominating them with whatever mental stat you excel at.
Shawn,
that would be the case, though, if it was a Christmas saving throw, because your save DC is your representation of you using your ability modifier to overcome them with your magic.
Right. Well, except that so if you're a wizard casting this, it's your intelligence against their charisma, essentially.
Right.
But when the
You're
save is
overcoming
set-
their charisma with your intelligence.
right. But what I'm saying is that I like the image of you are overcoming their intelligence with your intelligence. You're overcoming their wisdom with your wisdom. Like I like that symmetry. But yes, it probably should just be a charisma save. If you want to be a wet blanket about it, yes.
A
it should
wet
be a
blanket.
charisma save.
We need more charisma saves. Charisma is an underutilized stat. There's some spells in there that should be using charisma that don't. For instance, fucking polymorph should either be a con save or a charisma save, not a wisdom save. That makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you
but-
that.
So a couple things.
But I also wish there were more intelligence saves, and
True.
a wizard taking this spell gives you more of those, so...
True.
Counterpoint real quick to Adam before we spiral out here. I think Sid just put succeed on a saving throw of your spellcasting ability DC because he didn't realize to put like charisma saving throw.
No, and I acknowledged that. I said I don't know if this was just you forgetting to set the saving throw, but
Okay.
I like the image because...
All right.
Yeah.
Sid,
Well-
Sid is also mentioning that in there.
So my actual thoughts, I didn't know what to put. It gonna be real. So my actual thoughts on this are one. I think taking over the creature for a round. That is so short. It's hard for me to think about the balance of this because the immediate connection you should make with this spell and other spells is Dominate Monster. And Dominate Monster is 7th level. But it also lasts for a minute for concentration. Whereas this lasts for 1 round. So, and you lose your own turn and abilities, essentially. So it's hard.
Well, unless this is the last thing you do on your turn.
True. Well, in theory, though, you would be taking your next turn as the creature instead of your own stuff. Right?
See, my thinking was that on the creature's initiative, you would control its turn.
You take control of the body until the start of your next turn. I guess that should be explicitly laid out somewhere.
Well, he does say the possession lasts for the duration.
It lasts for the duration, and it says that you control it until the start of your next turn. So it tells you how long you control it. It doesn't tell you when you control it. And in theory, you should be controlling it on your initiative. Just like when a ghost possesses you in the game, they control you on their initiative, not on yours. Or
right, yeah,
if you wild shape.
As a matter of like mechanical bookkeeping, you should only be doing things on your initiative.
Yeah.
So,
though there's no reason why you couldn't just say, you control the creature on their initiative as if it were your turn or something like that.
right.
But I do like the idea of this. I think there might be some extra verbiage needed. Like, I think you did look at the Druid wild shape for this based on the fact that you were cognizant enough to add the target strength, dexterity, constitution, all that, but you keep your personality alignment. I think you probably looked at wild shape and was like, okay, yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I think there might be some more stuff that needs to be jacked for wild shape for this to be working how it should be. But I do like the idea of you going out and possessing another creature like a ghost. And that goes... Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that another thing I really like about it is that there is a punishment if the creature dies while you're possessing it.
Yeah, I do like that too. You're not meant to just take control of their body and then just kill them.
Yeah,
but like
well,
jump off a
and the
cliff or
fact
something.
and the fact that it consumes action economy to end the effect, you can't just end it at any time. It has to be as a bonus action, means that you don't have immediate control. You can't put them in a life-threatening situation and then just zoop yourself back out. Like,
Yeah, there is one thing about it that I was thinking about, and that is, as part of its design, what is the goal of this spell? Because it's only a round. So it seems like it should only be used during combat. You can't really use this too much outside of combat unless you're using a higher level spell slot. And then when it comes to damage, is this meant to be a spell where you use this creature's body to your advantage? As in using it to attack its allies or to buff your allies? Or are you taking control of its body to put it in harm's way? Put it in an advantageous spot for your allies to attack it? I get it's probably a mix of both. The reason I bring that up is because when you add a punishment like you take 2d10 psychic damage, it brings up the question of, okay, so I'm not incentivized to put this in harm's way because if it dies, I get screwed. So in that case, if you're not incentivized to put it in harm's way, should there maybe be a bigger negative? Because 2d10 psychic damage at 4th level is not that big of a deal.
I was actually just gonna say that. I was gonna ask if maybe that should be buffed up a little bit.
And another, like, other spells that have like the intention of like controlling creatures, like suggestion, don't allow you to explicitly put the creature in harm's way. So if this is meant to also deter you from doing that, a thing I was thinking was perhaps any damage the creature takes, you take half of, or something like that.
Oh, what if you just use the warding bond language that while
Yeah.
you're possessing the creature, you both share all damage?
Yeah, but that all depends on what your goal with the spell is. If your goal is to put it in harm's way, then maybe it should be a higher level spell slot, and there shouldn't be a deterrent. If it is to put it in harm's or isn't to put it in harm's way, then maybe the deterrent should be bigger, and that will allow it to be a lower level spell slot. That's my big thought on this one. Is like just what is the intended purpose of the spell?
One other thing.
What
that I thought
behaviors
was kind
are you trying to elicit with this? Go on.
Right, yeah. What are you trying to encourage by giving people this spell? One other thing is that some of the durations are a little funky. Like, I don't think 6 hours or 12 hours is the duration of anything. PHP.
12 hours is 6 hours. I think might be like one thing. It's like one of those rare like holdover spells,
Yeah.
but 12 hours definitely is.
What I was
8
gonna
hours
say
is usually the other.
8 hours.
Yeah, I was gonna say 8 hours is usually the next step. So I was gonna say at 8th level you could probably afford for this to be 8 hours, and at 9th level just a day.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Instead of 12, probably just a day.
Sid does mention,
Sid, yeah.
it was initially a longer duration, but I like the scaling idea. The idea for it being one round was that you can get it in a position you want or sow distress/confusion against the target and their allies. So
Okay.
I think to help with sowing distrust and confusion, because normally what's going to happen once the possession ends, there usually, there's some type of like sign, like your character will just be like, what happened? And when you're a party that can cast, you have people that can cast 4th level spells, usually, you're going to be kind of know them well enough to be able to figure out right away, okay, something just happened, they weren't themselves. And kind of vice versa when you're fighting monsters. Maybe like less intelligent creatures, you might be able to get away with this. But I think you need to kind of add just a little bit of something else in order to sow that distrust confusion.
I think that the sowing distrust mode works a lot better if the base duration is 1 minute.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna say is that like the 1 round thing, since you're within 30 feet of this thing, their allies are gonna see you cast a spell and know that you did something to it to make it attack you, so they're not gonna be tricked. So if that's something that if that's something that to you want to shine from this spell, I think you really should lean into this being kind of probably an out of combat thing and just embracing the longer duration. Though that would probably need you to make it a higher level spell to do so. I was also thinking increase the range so that you have a better opportunity for hiding.
I was going to mention that too. Probably like make the spell longer range. Like if this is like a 120-foot spell, that's a great way to kind of just for a single round, like
that'd
for
be
the
a lot
round.
though.
That's very long range.
So-
That's the range of Eldritch Blast.
I have one idea here that is kind of the opposite of this. If you made it kind of combined with what Adam was saying, where you take the damage from being like taking over the person, you make it touch, and when you take over them, your body is gone as you have like gone into them basically in some sort of way, and that's how you're taking the damage from that. But then I know you can't like hide your body and stuff like that, because I know we talked about it off stream.
Well,
Essentially,
and actually, another thing that so the fact that one of the components is a small doll with the likeness of the target, you probably aren't pulling this off in combat, unless it's a combat
Yeah.
where you know very far ahead of
Yeah.
time that you're going to be in close range of this person. So maybe to bump up the casting time to a minute. I think the range could go up then, but if you bump up the casting time to a minute, you are never pulling this off in combat, and you need to be discreet about it.
and then you can make it longer,
That's
basically.
the thing. Then you can have
Yeah.
it be a longer duration, because if you aren't pulling this off in combat, then the comparison with Dominate Monster isn't as severe.
I
And
do also think
oh, go ahead.
I do think too, this is probably the closest, at least to what I've seen, in terms of a player getting a spell that is like a ghost capability of possessing someone.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's really good and really cool. So
I think
I
it's
do
cool.
think I think transitioning this out of a combat spell into an out of combat spell definitely works a
Is
lot
initially
better.
not okay. Yeah, since it's initially not a combat spell, I think this spell definitely shines better if it's not a combat spell.
Yeah, this is.
I think
it gets way trickier to balance if you want this to be used in combat.
yeah, especially if it's like if you want to use this in like a boss monster, really fuck things up. But casting time 1 minute, make it a longer duration. You can do the likeness of the doll and all that, and then at that point, I would say double down on not encouraging hurting this creature.
Yeah.
Make it so that you take half all the damage it takes, and probably make a concentration as well, so they're even more deterred of hurting this creature, because then you can
absolutely.
lose concentration.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. This entire discussion has been under the assumption that this is supposed to be a concentration spell,
Yeah.
and so just forgot the word. Like,
Yeah, I think the spell does deserve to be concentration. And then at that point, if you start at lasting, if it has a cast time of 1 minute, I'm okay with the initial duration being like an hour.
again, I was thinking 10 minutes to start.
10 minutes to hour. Those are one tier away from each other. I was thinking an hour just because I feel like you can get the most mileage out of that in the same way you can get mileage out of invisibility, for like sleuthing.
Sure, yeah.
So
That's
like,
fair.
because that's kind of what the purpose of this spell is. It's not like a buff. It's like a combination almost of invisibility and
Alter self.
dominate monster and scrying, almost like all three of those in one.
It's also like alter self and just like being somebody else to get into a place. Instead of impersonating
I
somebody
made a
yourself,
concentration
you
at
have to
first,
become
but looking it up when you have unconscious status. So yeah, that's one thing, is that we have to fix the verbiage, because you're not going unconscious with this spell. Your body is becoming inert, but you still exist. You're just inside the monster, so you are not unconscious. Your body is.
I kind of like Justin's idea of your body disappears while you're doing this.
Well, that was Zach's, but I appreciate you for
Wait,
giving.
It was
no,
that.
I
Zach.
appreciate you for giving me the
I
that.
take it back, Justin. I hate everything you've ever said. Zach, great work.
Thank you.
But that is a good idea. Put them inside the monster, and if they lose concentration, they pop out of the monster, perhaps.
I was gonna say, if you lose concentration without the duration ending, you should probably reappear next to the monster. But if it lasts for the full duration, or you end it willingly, you should probably reappear where you cast it.
Yeah.
So, real quick, at least because I don't know how much more we wanna touch on this.
What? Real quick, I apologize. Also, make a transmutation. All right, go on.
If there's nothing else,
That's
to
a
say,
weird one.
I don't want to move on yet. I want to come back to that. Why is this transmutation and not enchantment?
Justin go.
Hold on, I want to hear what Justin has to say first. Hold on.
No, I was just gonna say, like, as we're getting ready to, like, kind of, if we were getting ready to close up, I was just gonna ask, what spells would we, or what classes,
would we give it to? I want to answer the school question before we answer what classes we're giving this to.
Yeah.
Why is this a transmutation spell?
This is transmutation because you are turning into like this kind of ethereal form that allows you to overcome this creature. You are granting yourself the ability of possession through this transmutation. But because we are changing, because we are doing it as like your whole body. I understand enchantment.
You are transmuting yourself in order to enchant this creature. I understand where you're coming from, and I think that this would be a great candidate for giving a spell to schools. Especially since the school of a spell has almost no mechanical bearing at all.
Yeah, besides like wizards and their subclasses, like writing them down, basically. That's about it.
Well, it does also in terms of the quartercasters for.
That's true.
Oh, I was gonna say this is a 4th level spell, so 3rd casters could have access to it. enchantment is one of the spells that arcane tricksters have access to, right? Or one of the schools.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
get
But it
enchantment
is
illusion,
not.
I believe.
It is not eligible for Eldritch Knight.
No.
No, but I mean they all get full access to the wizard class at some levels anyway.
I'm
But
trying
yeah,
to think. I'm trying to
Eldritch
think.
Eldritch Knight is evocation and abjuration.
Right. Yes. That's honestly. I think that I like that this is on the arcane trickster list. Like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But like you said, arcane trickster at certain levels gets any spell from the spell list, so it could be transmutation and still fulfill that. But so I think we're in agreement. This should definitely be on the wizard list.
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
Bards for sure.
Bards. Okay.
Ooh, yeah.
Cleric.
I don't think
Trickster?
that warlocks should have access to this.
I think clerics should get it.
Warlocks, I don't think warlocks should.
I'm hesitant about clerics. I don't know. I feel like this would go good with.
Clerics get access to some weird stuff.
That's fair. I don't know. This feels like one of those things where it's like I want to give to clerics, but
It's the sort of thing that, like, if you're an evil
If it's-
cleric, this is such a cool
Yeah,
thing to
yeah.
do.
that's
Plus,
a good
like,
idea.
Clerics know
Cler-
about this type of stuff. Like they know, so they would know how to use it. Like
Yeah.
All right,
kind of
yes,
my thought process.
clerics-
with
clerics-
a lot of them.
Clerics get animate dead. They get astral projection. They get bestow curse, blindness. I mean, they get all sorts of like ritualistic, strange spells. Astral
Like
projection is the big
etherealness.
one, I think. Yeah, I think etherealness. I think astral projection is the big one, honestly, because astral projection is all about pushing your consciousness out into the world beyond yourself.
Oh man, you know what spell I love that's on the cleric spell list? Gios, which this is functionally
Oh, yeah.
very similar to.
That's true.
That is
So I think
that is full cast.
I think that giving clerics access to this makes decent amount of sense. So clerics, wizards, bards. I
Not
think
druid.
no on warlocks. What do you
Nope.
guys think?
I want to say yes to warlocks, but I don't think so.
Thematically, I think it's all right, but just in terms of like, generally they don't give warlocks
What was-
spells that last a long time.
What was
If you
that?
Give a,
What was that rule that Adam said when he came in? If it's spooky, probably give it to warlocks.
right, probably, but this is a spell that we expect to have a long duration, and they are
Yeah.
very, very cagey about giving warlocks long duration spells, just because when you can short rest while concentrating on the spell, that means that you basically got to cast it for free.
Yeah, warlocks I'm pretty fond of. I'm okay with giving them this spell. I think they get
same.
I think they get
I-
pretty fucking fucked when it comes to their spell list, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think that the
think they do.
warlock spell list should be like doubled in size, but
I don't-
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay, what about sorcerers? Should this be on
No.
the sorcerer list?
No,
I don't think
No.
so.
no.
Artificer?
No.
No. Ranger or paladin?
Absolutely
No.
No.
Okay.
nah.
Then
Druid?
I think we're in agreement on
not
all of
Druid.
them. I think we're in
Forgot about
agreement
Druid,
on all
Adam.
of them except warlock.
Yeah,
And-
warlock's controversial.
Yeah, warlock. I can see either side of the argument, but I'd lean towards leaving it off their spell list.
This would be a cool evocation to give a wizard though.
Invocation.
Or invocation. Yeah,
Invocation for a
Invocation-
warlock, you mean?
yes, thank you. Invocation for a warlock. Like if they get the ability to cast the spell like
Like once per
Once-
day.
Once
yeah,
per day
like
without
once-
using a spell slot or something like that, or just once per day. They have all tiers of that. You can either cast at will once per day with the spell slot, once per day without a spell slot, and I fucking hate it.
I think this is
Versatility, man.
It's not
I think-
versatility.
Yeah, it's not versatility. It's just shot. It's just like buckshot that's just lying around, and you're
Buckshot.
like, wait, why are these all different sizes?
Hey, it worked, didn't it?
so bard, cleric, warlock, wizard.
Debatable on warlock, but yes. And I think that's a reasonable spell list
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah. But
None,
other than
none of the others really
had-
need it.
ton of great idea.
Super
Pretty-
evocative. Great work on getting the spooky vibe. Great job, Sid. Wasn't this whole theme Sid's idea?
It was Sid's idea that I translated last week to offering as an idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So nice work, Sid.
Yeah, I was gonna eventually make a possession spell. I just didn't. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that someone did.
like it.
And honestly, pretty good job for a lot of different stuff. You know, bringing up as Shawn had said earlier, kind of looking at a wild shape a little bit and taking some of the some of those main components from there.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've seen
yeah,
worse
wording was
language
well done.
from Zach and Justin, so nice
Yeah,
work.
absolutely. I've
Hey,
seen worse
yeah.
language from Adam.
My favorite wording. My favorite wording of this spell is you use the target's trignanth. I think that's the best part.
Pregnant, yeah.
wait, hold on.
And,
If we're
and
gonna
also Tutu Ian.
hold on. If we're gonna make fun of Sid, somebody spelled range a little bit wrong earlier today. Shawn, renege.
I don't even know what you're referring to be honest.
It was the very first spell we went over.
Wait, I don't.
Was it? I don't know.
It looks right on the document that I'm on.
I don't have.
Fixed it already. No,
Oh,
I
wait,
saw it. It was
did
messed
Shawn
up.
like already fix it, and then I'm just on a newer version?
I
of the
genuinely
page?
don't know what you're referring
No.
to.
Trying to find where it was. Okay, in phase 2, range attacks made at a range greater than 60 feet against the creature have advantage, and range attacks the target makes at the renege.
At that or
I
That
see,
renege.
yeah.
So
Hey,
give Sid a little bit of a break.
no. All right, moving on. The next couple of spells are Justin's. I put them together because though their names don't spell this out at all, the second one is just an enhanced version of the first one.
Yes.
Bombarad.
Though
So-
strange that one of them goes up by level, so I'm curious how you did that because I like that idea. So I've done it before.
So scroll up real quick just that way we can get to the
Oh,
top.
sorry. It was
Uh,
all lined up for me.
There we go.
Ooh.
So
There we
Provoke
go.
Paranoia is a 4th level enchantment available to bards, warlocks, and wizards. It's a casting time of 1 action, with a range of 120 feet. The components are vocal, semantic, and material, with the material being a doll made from human skin and hair.
Ooh.
That should probably actually be humanoid, not human, but duration, concentration up to a minute. You cast treachery and fear upon a creature's mind that you can see within range, inflicting them with maddening thoughts of betrayal. The target makes a wisdom saving throw. On a failure, that the target takes 5d8 psychic damage and spends their turn trying to get as far away as possible. If the target can see someone they consider as a loved one, instead, they will spend their turn attacking them. On a success, the target takes half damage and suffers no further effects. A creature can make another wisdom saving throw at the start of their turn, ending the effect on a success. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 5th level or higher, you can target one additional creature for each slot above 5th level. Do we want to break down both of them together, or do we
Probably
we
both
wanna
of them
break-
together since they're so similar.
Yeah, since they seem to be pretty directly connected.
So, could you scroll down a little bit for me?
Oh, sure. I gave you the link to the document, man.
Did you?
Yes, it's pinned in the Discord. It's always been.
Oh,
Although, in Justin's defense, I think that we should also scroll it so that our viewers
No, I
can
agree.
read the whole spell.
I agree.
Incite Betrayal. 7th level enchantment available to the same bard, warlock, and wizards. Casting time of 1 action with a range of 150 feet. The components are vocal and material, a doll made from the target's blood. Duration instantaneous. You bombard a creature with waves of paranoia and treachery that you can see within range. The target makes a wisdom saving throw. On a success, the target takes 8d10 psychic damage and suffers no further effect. On a failed save, the creature believes the person closest to them is attempting to undermine and betray their efforts. They will attempt to avoid this person at all costs and work against their efforts. This can include hiring spies, sabotaging businesses, or spreading lies, but the creature will not actively harm the person. At the end of every 30 days, the creature can repeat its saving throw against the spell. It will make it a disadvantage if it has seen the person they have been attempting to undermine. If it succeeds on a saving throw, it takes 10d10 psychic damage and the spell ends. The spell can also be ended by greater restoration or wish. Did I spell bombarded wrong?
Yeah, and you put
Bombarad.
physic instead of psychic. All right.
God! Fuck.
So
wanna
I
talk about it.
like what these spells are going for.
I actually
my-
put physics both times.
Oh, did you? Funny. The first one, it seems fairly niche. I think the main thing when you read the spell, when you see it, you're gonna be like, "Oh man, that second effect's that's so cool and thematic." But then again, how often does someone
So-
go onto the battlefield with their loved one?
So the reason that was more of kind of a filler word for it. I was having a hard time coming up with the correct wording for it because I didn't
I mean,
want to.
why don't you just say an ally?
That's
Yeah,
what I
the nearest
wanted.
ally.
That's what I wanted to, but also I think it would be. I think what I should probably change it to is a trustworthy ally.
Why not just an ally?
I guess, yeah, whatever.
That's the thing. I don't. Since this has mechanical consequences,
Yeah.
you want to use words that have mechanical meaning. So you shouldn't say things like
Well-
trustworthy or loved.
Ally and enemy don't have the best mechanical meaning, but yeah, it would be sufficient in the same way that the paladin aura is sufficient when it refers to allies and enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the main reason too that I was having kind of a hard one with that is because I didn't want it to be like the first person that they like the first ally that they saw. Uh because in my mind, one of the ways that I played this spell out in my head was this is casted against the party, and let's just take our party for example, and we'll have, who would Burzum trust the most in our party, and then he immediately is going to go after them. And
That's very hard to word, and I don't
That's the
think
thing.
that can
That
be
is
done.
that is a great narrative device.
Yes.
That it's not really
I-
something that you can translate mechanically.
I
yeah,
think that has to be at the discretion of the player and DM at the table for something like that.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
I imagined it was going to be way too difficult to be able to make that in words, so I think just changing that to an ally, perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable.
I think that it's perfectly fine to say it attacks the creature it trusts the most that it can see, or something like that. I think that's fine. I think there are other spells that do stuff like that with similar kind of wording. My only issue with it was that the way that's written here is, let's say, if we use our party for example, let's say Rhaegon goes on a mission for Wavelock. He goes to lead a party of guards with him, and this spell is cast on him. He's not going to attack anyone because he's not considering those guards a loved one, right? Which is
Right.
why I was suggesting an ally, simply because it would guarantee usually that there's someone that they can attack. Usually you're not going alone. I personally, I know that Zach and Adam disagreed with it, but I personally think the idea of it being specifically the character, the person or creature that the target trusts the most, because that can be just sorted out at the table. I don't think that's a big deal. I think just having the player and the DM sort that out. I mean, it's gonna be a player more than the DM, of course. It's really fine. And if you say it's the most trusted creature, that will guarantee that there is someone that they see that they will attack. Because even if it's just them and the enemy, they're going to attack the enemy because that is technically the most trusted creature in the area.
Well,
I think
run
if you-
away.
I think if you say the most,
Yeah.
if you're going with that most trusted language, it should be the most trusted ally, since the base
Yeah, that
mode
works
of this
too.
spell is that they run away from you.
I think I would
That's
add the caveat of ally, and if the most trusted ally is within range, they will target them. Add both of those wordings on.
Well, yeah, just say will target the most trusted ally, or their most trusted ally, or the ally they trust the
that would
most,
work.
or something like that.
That
That
could
way,
work.
it'll if there's an ally nearby, it will guarantee that they will attack an ally.
I'm cool with that.
So on Incite Betrayal, it feels wrong to me that on a success,
Yeah,
they take 8d10 psychic damage.
10d10.
well, that's
no,
on
on the initial
Oh,
success,
wow.
even if the spell has no other effect on them, even if it never takes hold, they immediately take 8d10 psychic damage. That feels like a lot for making your save.
I was trying to figure out how to like what damage levels for it, and obviously, if you couldn't tell, I took Feeble Mind for Feeble Mind was a lot of inspiration for this. So for
Yeah.
me, I remember I was like thinking of damages, and then for whatever reason, I read Feeble Mind. I was like, oh, they just take this damage regardless of failure or success.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I mean, I don't necessarily have an issue with someone taking damage if they succeed, because that happens with most AoE spells. But the amount of damage here is a bit
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
What you're saying in this situation is that 8d8 psychic damage is half as good as the effect of this spell.
yeah.
Uh because that's usually how the spells work, is that if you succeed, you take half the damage.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the rest of this effect is worth 16d10 damage, which, by the way, includes 10d10 when they eventually do succeed on the save.
I disagree with the 10d10 entirely.
Yeah, I think that's a bit much.
Okay.
I think if you're, I mean, like you said with like Feeble Mind does do damage as part of its effect.
It's 4d6, and Feeble
Yeah.
Mind is also an 8th level spell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a big discrepancy there in the damage. I think without the damage, I clearly understand this spell. I think 150 is a very weird range to choose. I don't know why you didn't just choose 120.
Because that's the
Copy it
range.
from Feeble Mind.
Yep, that is the same range as Feeble
Oh,
Mind.
well then, okay. I mean, yeah, sometimes those ranges do come into effect. I was thinking it more because I was looking at Provoke Paranoia, and when you sold these spells to me, you said one was just a stronger version than the other. These are very different spells.
No. So here's
they have
why
the
I'm
same
saying that-
theme.
yes, but also I think.
But when you were telling me about it, you're like, oh yeah, I'm making like a lesser and greater version of the same effect. So I was thinking like lesser and greater summon demons, where it's like the same
Well, and
effect but
actually,
stronger.
In a certain sense, Provoke Paranoia is the stronger effect in combat, since
In
you
combat,
don't
yeah.
need the doll to be made from the target's blood, and it actually causes them to attack one another, whereas Incite Betrayal does not explicitly cause them to attack them. It causes them to try to sabotage them, but not physically attack. So, like,
Yeah.
Incite Betrayal is a much more intrigue type spell, whereas Provoke Paranoia is the one with greater combat utility.
Yeah. Incite Betrayal was the spell that I crafted more for the DM to use. Provoke Paranoia was more of the player's spell.
Oh, also, since you have the spell called Provoke Paranoia, I really think that you should have an alliterative name for Incite Betrayal as well. Like maybe Breed Betrayal or like something like
Incite
that.
insomnia.
But Insomnia doesn't fit there, like-
Insomnia.
You're so worried about this other person.
They're losing so much sleep on it.
But I see where you're coming from, Shawn. I think that was probably that there was similar effects. I should have worded that these two spells had very similar effects, but
I wouldn't even call these
don't-
very similar. These
No.
this is like the comparison between like hold person and hold or dominate person. Like
They are definitely like thematically similar, but
I will say, I think that's a bit strong that you can target an additional person for every level above 5th. That's a lot of people at a high level.
it should probably just be target like for every 2 spell slots.
I'm not for a 4th level spell with one of I'm not actually too concerned about it, because cut straight up to a minute, and again, hold person's like one of the spells I go to all the time, but hold person's the paralyzed condition, and it's one additional person per level above 2nd, which we should catch at 8th level, for instance. That's fucking 7 people. You could paralyze like that.
what about Beget Betrayal?
I didn't
Beget? Is that the right verb here?
Oh no,
like, sure.
I don't know what
Get betrayal.
I
didn't-
don't know what beget means.
I didn't realize that whole person was one
Yeah.
person every level. That's fine then.
But
Just
pretty
having to
badass.
attacking each other.
Yeah, I like the idea of like passing this at 7th level and making a whole party of 4 start attacking each other.
Yeah.
And especially if they all trust the same person the most.
They all go for it.
poor bastard.
Like I think it'd be pretty obvious that if we cast this on your guys' party, you'd all attack Rhaegon probably.
Fuck!
Which would be pretty fucking funny. Who would Rhaegon attack? What, like
Who is-
Alexandria probably?
Who is Rhaegon attacking in the party?
Probably Alexandria would be my guess.
Probably either Alexandria or Burzum.
Alexander would
Urza?
probably attack Anura.
Oh yeah, I could see that too.
Nobody's
Yeah, I guess-
attacking Penance.
No.
No,
Yeah,
You
that was
actively
attacking
killed him.
penance.
Penance has actively killed one member of our party. I
Hey,
think
that wasn't my fault.
He actively killed the
I
trust of that
mean-
party member though. Um, I think 7th level is a
Aw.
reasonable. I think 7th level is a reasonable spell level for this, especially if you cast it on a particularly powerful NPC.
Yeah.
Like that'd be pretty wild. The one thing, I just want to make sure. Hold on, Barbara. You can see range card takes specific. Fails the creature believes the person closest to. Well, the one issue I have with it is that you can't choose who they undermine. They only undermine the person that's closest to them. So if they
Yeah, that's why.
undermine, if I cast this on someone whose most trusted companion is like their little brother, they're just gonna undermine the little brother. I'm like, I don't really get anything out of this. So I cast this spell.
Right.
I think that in general, you're trying to undermine the person you cast this on. So by them working to undermine their closest friend, they are undermining themselves. They're like breaking off that relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I just think. Go on.
also the way too that kind of more to it was when I talked about this hiring spies, sabotaging businesses, spreading lies, like that sort of stuff. You are actively investing time, probably coin. If you are an NPC and you run a mercenary guild, for example, you're going to be sending mercenaries out to fuck with this person. However you're going to do that, you're going to be
Yeah,
using.
but if you do that to the mastermind of the Merchants Guild, but they're like a mastermind because they're trying to support their dying mother, like it doesn't do anything for you.
Like I said, this is definitely more of a DM spell, but I also think that if if you are able to, if like the right hand man of the big bad, this is a way that you could essentially work to undermine them from within.
To be perfectly honest with you, Justin, I think that this is awful as a DM spell because with one failed wisdom save, a player character loses control of the general course of their actions for 30 days. At least with Feeble Mind, like you're unable to do anything, but you aren't actively working against your party members and you still have control over yourself. I think that this is pretty awful for a DM to use against a PC.
I wouldn't say it's necessary, like right off the bat, awful, like across the board. I think there are plenty of DMs and tables where this spell would be fucking awesome to them. I don't know if I'm one of those players necessarily. I think I could be in the right context of the campaign, but like I could definitely think of campaigns where it's like, by the way, player, because I've cast a spell on you, I've recruited you as somebody who's trying to undermine your party's efforts. There are plenty of tables I think where that could go over positively. It's going to be up to the DM to really be able to read their table. And hopefully by the time they know some level spells, that's going to be something that you know, but
maybe I'm just not the type of player who this would play well with then, because I cannot imagine a table I've ever played at where this would like feel at all okay. Like
I've played at tables where similar things have happened. Like my last campaign with my uncle, like if you died, your alignment changed, which is a pretty big deal. That changes the course of how you play your character, and I did not feel particularly great about it, to be honest. I didn't like that feeling of like having to change the way I play my character and like my vision of that character,
Yeah.
in an inorganic way, which is kind of what this spell would do. And the biggest problem with this spell, if it were to affect me, for instance, is that there's no obvious clue in. With Feeble Mind, it's fucking obvious this person's been devastated mentally. This spell, not so much. But I do think this spell has worked at some tables. Just not ones that I play in. Like I would never use this spell against you guys. I wouldn't feel good about it. But not to use against players, but as a DM to use it against my own NPCs.
Yes.
That's different.
Yeah, no,
That's what I was
that
gonna
could
go with
be
there.
very cool. Like this is a cool spell to have like happening in the background of your campaign, I think.
Yeah.
But to be frank, at that point, if the spell like
You can kind of just make some shit up.
this thing, if the magical effect is not coming from a player character or directly impacting a player character, you don't even need to design a spell. Just be like, this is happening. A spell is why.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's very fair.
At least that's my personal style. Because I'm very much of the school that the spells that are available to you as the players only represent a very small fraction of the magic that exists in the world. There is far more magic than any of you will ever be capable of. This is just what you can do.
That's why we're discovering them here on this channel.
We're
But
digging 'em up,
I
man.
can-
Inch by inch, we are discovering every magic ever.
The infinity
I
of
can-
unfathomable magics that exist.
I can understand everyone's trepidation and hesitancy for us at our tables and whatnot. I think this would have, like, if I was going to use this as a PC, this was going to be something that we know kind of the structuring of the BBEG's like command group. We know that if we can convince one of them to betray them or use something like this, we could start, we could start really messing with plans. But
well, the only problem with this spell as a player character is that you don't know who they trust most. If you, for instance, if you cast this spell on Kyrus, he's not gonna overthrow Ulamir, Marsival, whatever. He's gonna go like fuck up this. I don't. One of his stretches. I don't know who the fuck Kyrus trusts the most. It's not any of those characters. I can tell you that. It doesn't
So-
buy you anything as a PC unless
what
you
if-
know everything you need to know about that character already.
so to tweak it a bit, what if we change it to
I think you should be.
truck-
I think you should be able to choose who they undermine.
okay.
I'm not sure that you should be able to choose who they undermine because, like, if you're choosing who they undermine, there is not necessarily any betrayal going on. You're just picking a guy and telling him to fuck over someone else. Like,
What if you just make it undermine your closest allies?
Well, I was gonna that was what I was gonna say. I was gonna say to like undermine a close ally or
Yeah,
close.
This is
Closest
where
ally-
ally starts to be an issue.
Right.
yeah.
Because my dying mother is my ally. Like, unless you mean closest by physically closest, in which case that could be different. But
You guys all see my kitty?
Barely.
Yeah, since I'm wearing a black shirt, he kind of disappears. But
I don't know this.
Yeah, it's a rough one. Go on,
That's-
Zach. Sorry.
No, I don't really know what wording you could use on this one for it. And I can quickly see this derailing a campaign if used by a DM onto a player character.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And that worries me to especially have it be 30 days. Because if you're if your party cares enough, they'll detain that character and do what they can to like get them to like get them back to who they are.
So
But if you're like used on like a rogue character or somebody who's really good at getting away, are they just gone now? Like,
what about if we shortened the save then to like every day or every week?
the thing is, if it's every day,
it's still a huge
then-
derail.
well, that's the thing. Every day is still plenty of time for a PC to get away, but it's not enough time for an NPC to fuck somebody else over.
Mhm.
Like, I think that the problem is that this spell has a completely different power level used against an NPC or used against a PC. And so that makes it kind of impossible to balance, because if it's balanced for being cast against a PC, it's kind of worthless for the players to use on anyone else.
Yeah, it's
That's
a little rough.
fair.
Again, I don't think that this is like... I don't think this is a bad spell for existing, but I think that you would have to be very, very careful if you were a DM trying to use this against your party.
Or allowing your party to use it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because if your party casts this on a trusted lieutenant of the big bad, and then the trusted lieutenant decides to fuck over someone who isn't the big bad, it's going to be tough to make that narratively satisfying. But on the other hand, if they cast it on him expecting him to fuck over the big bad, you as the DM are now kind of pigeonholed into making him work against the big bad, even if that's not actually the person he trusts the most. Like,
Yeah.
it is simultaneously too broad and too narrow at different points in the way that it works. I think that it's a great idea. It's super
Yeah, I
evocative.
love the idea.
I think that Provoke Paranoia is the better of the two spells. because one, you can use it in combat. Two, it has strict limitations on what it does and doesn't do.
That's fair. I knew that I was gonna have a hard time coming up with good verbiage, good language for Incite Betrayal. I knew it was difficult. I wanted to be able to at least be able to bring what I wanted the spell to do.
Well, and
And
you brought a really cool spell here. Like I said, I'm sure there are tables where this spell plays out as not only good, but like one of the star moments of the campaign. Like, oh fuck, do you remember when I cast Incite Betrayal and it totally turned everything around? Like, I could totally see this being the hinge of a campaign where it's like, actually, we thought that we were totally gonna lose, and then I got a hold of somebody's blood and I cast Incite Betrayal, and it put just enough of a monkey wrench in the big bad's plans that that we were able to turn things around. Like, I could see this being awesome. But I think that it is a very, very, very dangerous spell, not to any particular person, but to the narrative of a game.
And that's perfectly fair. Like I said, that's why you bring me. That's why you guys bring me on here. Because I come
So
up
that
with
you can destroy the concept of narrative?
no, so you guys can destroy spells when I don't know how to word them. Maybe not necessarily word them.
I don't mean to like
No.
be tearing you apart over this.
No.
This is
That's a
really
meme.
cool.
It's
No.
a meme. It's
To
a
be
joke.
clear,
I'm fine.
No, to be clear, I just want to say this. The wording of the actual effect of the spell is actually really well done. Like, I have no ambiguity about what the spell actually does. The only issue with the spell is the unknowns that come with believes the person's closest to them, and what effects that has, even if knowing, to the campaign, from both sides of the table.
Yeah.
Also, physic damage.
Yeah, physic damage. I think I have physic damage in there twice and
You
psychic
did.
damage in there once.
Actually, as far as I can tell, you've got physic in there all 3 times.
Fuck. Honestly, I typed it in like Google. I was just like trying to make sure that I spelled it right, and I was like, "That's not how you spell psychic." And I was like typing it in, and I was like, "Is that how you spell psychic?"
The trouble is that what you have written here is a word. Like, physic is a thing.
It's just not the right word.
It's not the word
It's
you
just not the right
wanted.
So we're over an hour and a half here, and we've only gotten through one of each. Though, to be fair, Adam had 2 holdovers, and we got through both of Justin's. So do we continue this next week? What's everybody feling on this one?
I don't know if we want to do a continuation, but there's a lot left. So I think
the thing. We are less than halfway through the document, and we're only halfway through, even if we ignore both of my, like, oh, hey, I just copy pasted this from my other homebrew document.
and
So, like, I
there's
think
4
that we
more
should probably
spells.
finish this off next week. Just make spooky spells a 2-parter. Our first ever 2-parter. Although we totally thought that the subclasses were going to be a 2-parter, but we got through them.
I don't. Well, that's going
I
to be
think-
forced time.
I'm fine with just posting the rest of them online. Like we gave you a sample of what we have. The rest of them are spooky spells.
I don't want to do that because part of the process is talking
Or we
about it
just
here.
bring it back at some point.
Yeah, I think bringing it back at some point. I don't know if I want to do this again next week, because I
Okay,
am
that's
actually very
fine.
interested in the idea that Zach came up with for next week.
Okay, I think
Um,
that's totally fair. So we will have our part 2 honestly, this might be a really
Halloween.
good thing for, hey, we're all busy this week and don't have the time to come up with new ideas. Let's do
Yeah.
part 2 of spooky spells.
Yeah, and or we could just bring it back in October because I would love to do a ton of just spooky themed stuff in October leading up. We've already got the cursed items idea, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like that. Do
Um,
spooky spells and cursed items in the month of October. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we can hold off on my cool effects until October. That's fine. We can talk about it then.
To be fair, I think that my spell is going to be pretty talked about as well. So
We will bring them back at some point. We don't need to
yeah,
nail
let's
something
not
down
commit
right now.
but
But I think that, like I said, we've gone over an hour and a half here. We're gonna say, Adam, I apologize.
I was going to say that both of my spells, despite being holdovers, are spells that I absolutely love. So I'm excited to talk about them on stream.
Though I'm very weirded out about talking about those because I've already made adjustments to both of those spells, and it feels strange to talk about them again. And then, like, I don't know. It feels very comparative and strange to me.
Yeah, that's fair.
But we still have plenty of spells. We have 4 more spells that aren't those. So we'll hold these over to another time. But Zach had an idea before the podcast about what we could do next week, and I thought it was a really fun idea. The idea is we make magic items, or items, doesn't necessarily magic, that are based on a creature. So that doesn't necessarily have to be like a magical item that like emulates a creature. It could be an item made from the creature. Anything to
Doesn't
do
have to be an
with the
animal,
creature.
specifically any creature from the book as well.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be an animal or specifically a creature, but like any sort of creature from any of the.
I love that idea, and I love it so much that I've already got 2 ideas. Like,
beautiful. I have 0.
So that's what we're gonna be doing next week. We're not gonna be continuing this directly next week. Maybe some other time. Maybe at a time where we just kind of feel like talking about these finally. But I've been excited by this idea. And was there anybody wanted to say before we go ahead and sign off for the week?
Fundament. That's my word of the day.
You say fundament?
Fundament.
Okay.
I will reply to that. Fundamental.
Oh, okay. Classic.
Those come from, of course, the fundamental plane of fire. All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week at Lost Legends, where we talked about.
You're not gonna give Zach his final word? What the hell?
He didn't say he had anything to say.
I'll just be a ghost in the background of this spooky episode.
Hell yeah. Woo! Thanks for joining us this episode of Lost Ledgers. We talked about spooky spells. Next week, we'll be talking about items based on creatures in the game of any sort, whether it be an item made from the creature or an item based on the creature's abilities or anything like that. Kind of like Sid's possession spell. So join us next week if you want. We'll be talking about that. And thanks for joining us today. And remember, that which is I forgot the phrase. That which is lost must be found.
That which has been found must be remembered.
Remembered.